It's a recording. I figure we could continue along with the offensive accents. Amusement parks are fun.
They can be.
Want a Black Tower amusement park.
You walk in the front gate and you immediately go into a wine tasting.
Yes.
No, a wine tasting is how you end the Black Tower.
It's at the exit. The Black
Well, it
Tower
depends.
Wine Garden.
Do you go through the Logain side entrance or the Taim side entrance?
Both.
See, that's
If you go through the Taim side
Orcano
entrance,
Los Dos.
immediately to the wine tasting. It's like
To the
it's a
wine!
small loop that just goes in, wine taste, exit.
while other people watch you and point and
Oh.
laugh at you. Ha ha, sucker. It's another BTP for you and me, doing regular recording for fun and delight. So yeah, welcome to the Black Tower.
Indeed.
Sorry, I was just getting all the wetness off of my waifu dubby cup.
That's a nice dubby cup you got there.
Yeah, it's a dubby with the double D's.
Dubby.
As in double these amounts of energies that I has.
Sugar-free energy without the crash. Go to dubby.gg and you get a 10% off if you type in coupon code BTP.
B
Was that a good
T.
commercial? Should we do that?
P.
I think it's good. I don't even know if we were plugging them this time.
Nope,
we
we're not.
weren't, but we did
Oh no!
now.
Oh no! I thought we weren't.
We
I was
we
like,
done
no, we
it.
are. We are. We actually are plugging them this time.
Indeed.
I was about to say whether or not we are, we did.
Well, no, we were actually on schedule. It helps if
Hey,
I.
look at that.
Yeah.
No,
we didn't even,
I
we didn't even
changed
mean
it.
to.
I just changed it, guys. I literally went into the spreadsheet and changed it as you guys were doing the commercial.
Oh, look at well, why did you have to ruin it, Daniel? Why did you have to ruin it?
Heresy lies. Gentlemen, we have been lied to, we have been scammed, and quite possibly even
Bamboozled? Oh no, not the bamboozling.
They call me the bamboozler.
So I want to tell you guys my favorite story that has ever involved the word heresy in a second after we introduce ourselves, because of course this is the Black Tower podcast. This is a Wheel of Time podcast. You've come here for jokes. You've come here for fun. You've come here for drinks. You've come here for taint. You've come here for making fun of Mazrim Taim. And also you've come here for stories. So I am going to be your first storyteller here.
So,
Daniel,
story.
your Amin Khan Mahale.
But I guess if Andrew and I both take a drink at the same time, we both can't introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm your Tainty Mahale, Josh. I'm the dumbass currently sewing my own Ashaman coat for JordanCon. Guess what? If someone says you could just sew it yourself, it'll be easier and cheaper. They're a liar in 2 dimensions.
All that makes me think of is the fucking congratulations, you're stupid in 3 languages.
That's exactly it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Andrew, who are you? Who are you?
I am your waifu, Mahale. Andrew,
Heyo.
I am not the one that will be sewing anything, but instead will be making it work with whatever I find and buy.
That works, man.
So
if you want to
I
follow
will-
my cosplay progress, go to our TikTok, go to our Instagram, and look us up and you can follow. I'm posting videos about the progress and the different things I'm doing, so you can follow my frustrating as hell journey on my first
very
ever
entertaining.
cosplay.
It's very entertaining. Also, I will throw a quick caveat on here. Josh, they're not wrong, though they're also wrong, because if you do actually sew your own clothes and or costumes, it is easier and cheaper once you have a shit ton of experience.
Well,
but if
there's
it's your
that.
first one, then you're gonna have a bad time.
I will say with this particular coat, now granted, I picked out
Also, starting with a coat, not a
great.
call.
I picked out great materials, right?
I
I'm super
believe you.
excited. I got like a snakeskin print for the inside lining. I'm calling it dragon scale print for obvious reasons. I'm in this thing about $250. Like, I should have just bought the damn thing online somewhere.
Damn. All right,
But
then.
the experience.
But the
I mean,
experience,
and it is gonna be really cool getting to Jordan Con when you and where you're just like, hey, also, guess what? I made this.
And
And
well,
people are just like, oh my god, Josh, you
No,
unless
should
unless
Now,
it
if you
looks
show
like
up and
shit.
it's
Unless it looks like
what if
shit,
you show
and
up
then
and
they'll
it's
be
like
yeah,
an
we know.
Ashamon Gleeman coat?
That
You just like you make like
would
too many bad cuts and
actually
you're like
be a bad.
and you're just like
coat.
fuck it. We're just gonna make it like a patchwork of dragon scale and
You might be onto something there, sir.
Are you gonna do this now, or should I do it?
You should.
I'm
do
not
it.
gonna do it.
Okay, great. I'm in. Just get a shit ton of material that's just like little squares of just
Oh my
black,
God.
somewhere to black to dark gray material, and just like the
The other thing I'm excited about,
as an Ashaman.
the only sort of descriptor I can find without going back through the book is that it's like that they're all made of different materials. And it, depends on people's like status and wealth. Like some people have silk coats, some people have wool coats.
That's right.
And so I was kind of like, oh, cool. So
I'm gonna have a burlap loincloth.
Yeah, there you go.
Diet black Andrew running around in his
Oh yeah.
Tarzan
I have
Ashaman.
an Ashaman coat and I want to paint it black.
Thank God he's wearing something under there and he's not. Oh God.
Ashaman
Anyway.
kilt. All right, so I have a story that
All right.
has to do with our word of the day, which was apparently heresy because I'm making it the word of the day because we said it once. So in high school, your senior year of high school, you did 2 semesters of English, which every other year you also did 2 semesters of English, but it was a year of English, and it was just like American Lit or whatever. Your senior year, they broke it up into all of the different things that weren't AP English were a semester-long class, and there were a bunch of different options. There was creative writing, there was argument and debate, there was don't even remember all of the other ones because those were the only 2 I took, but there were like 7 different options and they were each a semester long. So I took creative writing and argument and debate, and my favorite unit that we did in argument and debate was cartoon justice, which was basically mock trial, but done as 2 classic cartoon characters, one suing the other. So my group, there were 4 of us, because you were the actor in somebody else's thing, and then you were the lawyer in your own. So I was the defense attorney for Brain being sued by Pinky for reckless endangerment. It was great. It was fantastic. But we're going along and we're doing this thing, and I have a bunch of questions to ask Brain, of course, when he gets up onto the stand and is testifying for himself. And the actor that I had playing Brain was not great, but he was good enough and it was fine. But I had to go ahead and
Story of my love life.
but I had to go ahead and do a little bit of like feeding him stuff because he just wasn't that prepared, which was
Objection,
fine.
leading the witness.
We're getting there. You're ahead of me. So we get to this point where I am basically feeding Brain lines in some ways. And of course, the other lawyer knows what's wrong, or knows that something is wrong, but can't figure it out because he's in high school and this is not his forte.
Right.
And he's figuring it out. And we've just learned this unit. And of course, me watching lawyer shows my entire life was like, I know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm not going to stop because you don't know enough of what I'm doing. So he finally goes with objection, heresy. So after the entire class stops cracking up because they just heard that, my teacher, who is acting as the judge, stops everything and he goes, all right, Nick, I don't even know where to start on this, because what you just objected to is blaspheming against God, and that is definitely not what Daniel was doing. Second, the word you were looking for, which is objectable, is hearsay. And third, that's not what he was doing either.
I love it.
So he was like,
Beautiful.
definitely overruled. Daniel, stop leading the witness. Continue. And I was just like,
Wait.
amazing.
It could work. At least in the olden days, whenever you would swear in for your testimony on a Bible, and then if in the process of giving their testimony, they breached a tenet of the
testimony?
Bible,
Priest.
then, or they blasphemed God as part of their testimony, like if they said, God damn, then object to heresy.
So
And it shows they
again,
don't take their oath to give the truth on the stand seriously.
We need the Law and Order soundbite to come in right now. Dum, dum, dum.
in the Black Tower justice system, people are represented by two equally important but separate groups.
You are
Equally
sentenced to
important but
one
incompetent
glass
lawyers.
of wine.
The Mazrim Taims who try to destroy things, and the Lona Gain Ablars who build them back up. These are their stories.
Did you say the loan again of Lars?
Lona
The
Gain of
Lone
Lars.
Gain Ablars.
Lona Gain of Lars.
Yes,
I
the
thought
Lona
the
Gain
audio was
Ablars.
on.
You are hereby sentenced to one glass of wine.
I think the audio messed up, but I do like the phrase "loan again oblars."
Daniel.
It's like Logain is left, and it's just like some random person talking to the Ablar family. Loan again, Ablars, huh?
All right. You didn't come here, though, to hear us talk about Daniel's high school experiences or incorrect statements of Lona Gain of Lars. You came here for us to talk about the Wheel of Time and a specific topic therein. So tonight we're going to be talking about something very special, very metaphysical, very interesting. No, not actually metaphysical. It's philosophical, not metaphysical. Philosophical.
One of
we're
those
going
holes.
to wax philosophic.
Yes, we are going to wax poetic.
I don't know
And-
why we're waxing Phil's sophic. I don't know
Actually,
what
you
sophic
know
is,
what?
But Phil
To be-
likes it. So
To be completely honest, that might have actually been a really good story to like jump in on this for, because our topic today is a bit of a debate. It's a bit of a this or that, a bit of a bring receipts and decide who did the most damage, that kind of thing. Because today,
Ooh, so it is a court case.
kind of. So we are talking about who or what caused the most damage during the breaking. Now, we're definitely going to have to set some ground rules here because
We're gonna need parameters.
obviously there's definitely an answer to this to a certain degree, but it's also the point of this, and the reason that we're going to be going into it is there are lots of causes. There are lots of foundations. There are lots of mistakes. There are lots of good, like all of this is so much tied into it that we want to sort of break it down more into its components and check out a little bit more of what the actual sort of biggest impacting single thing, if you will, or person was during the breaking. Andrew, you were going to say something.
But before we can do that, you need to be protected, because
Correct.
though
Right.
things may be before the events of the book, they will definitely spoil many things within the book. And today, bringing you your spoiler warning is
Spoiler
Brilliance
warner.
Apprentice.
The Black Tower stands fully erect.
When the tower is bulging at full erectness, you must protect yourself from tainty spoilers.
Your spoiler condom must cover the immense girthiness of all 14 books of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time.
With an itty bitty tip at the top for the prequel New Spring.
If your condom is too small, you will get tainty spoiler jizz all up in your eye.
Or ears.
You
have been warned.
I do love-
no Lowe's dose.
I do love
Yep.
that. So first off, if you're a patron or if you become a patron, you do have the option of submitting a spoiler warning to us for use in our shows. We absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite segments, one of my favorite things about this. Also, I love that so many of them have kept the theme that the melodious Michael Kramer gave us in the very beginning of You Have Been Warned.
warned.
That man's
Yes.
voice can just
And you'll never see it coming.
Okay. Anyway, Daniel, please continue your pontification.
Yeah, so I think that was basically the intro for what we're gonna do. This is gonna be a little bit of like a spitball episode, which is kind of nice because
We don't ever
I
do
don't.
those.
Okay, so I've done a ton of research, so we're actually just gonna listen to a Daniel TED talk, and they're gonna. Respond.
Cool.
Of course,
Andrew,
we do those, Josh.
Let's
Get
go
out
for
of
it.
here. No, so
Which is fun because this whole episode spun from the idea. I forgot what episode we were doing, but we got kind of on this topic of like of did Luce Theron, or my side of it at least, was did Luce Theron get an unjust bad rap?
Yes.
Because other than the blanket Aes Sedai are responsible for the end of the world, it's Luce Theron that gets all of the flack for everything bad that happened after somebody went and like tried to tongue punch the Dark One's fart box in the Sharon.
On his home territory, no less. Come on.
It's not the boar. That's the tongue punch of the fart box right there. That's what that is.
tongue punch.
And I made the statement that I think it is unfair to blame Luce Theron
Yes.
for being like the main reason everything went to shit, or being so culpable for so much of it. And instead of talking about it then and there, we decided let's do an episode and talk about who we think or what events or mix of the two or whatever are actually responsible for some of
Right.
the most damage leading up to the books. And then we can also do like in the books. I don't remember exactly what phrase to use. I think we just did in the Wheel of Time.
Mhm. We said during the breaking specifically, but
Oh, did we?
yeah.
I actually even retyped it today and didn't even read that part apparently. Autofill for Excel spreadsheets. Thank you.
Indeed, right?
And I remember my sort of take on it was that it's real easy in these kinds of scenarios where you're dependent on a fractured history to formulate or to cultivate your culture, your ideals. And so, this whole thing of, even in episode 1 of The Wheel of Time, Moraine says that, a man called the dragon attempted to attack the Dark One directly. The arrogance, I'm paraphrasing. But the idea is a very common one, that Luce Theron led an attack against the Dark One, and he did so arrogantly. And as we started talking more and more about this, we kind of went, is that actually the case? Should we dive into this? And so that's what brought us here.
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of start because, well, actually not start. Andrew actually started us off very well in terms of sort of explaining a little bit about where this came from and doing things like that. And I I definitely agree to a certain extent. There is a lot of blame that is placed on Lews Therin, partially because he was the figurehead of the time and people know who he was. Most common folk don't even really know who the Tamerlane was at the time.
True.
Most people don't even know the names of most of the other people that were involved, but Lews Therin Kinslayer, the dragon himself, is still a name that is in time. It is still something that people remember. And they have had years and years and years and years and years to take all of the blame from anyone else and just shove it onto Lews Therin because it's easier than taking the nuance of there were actually a lot of people involved in this. There were actually a lot of different components that led to this. There are a lot of different pieces that had to move around for this to happen. Oh, no. Let's just blame Lews Therin. And so I absolutely think that overall, Lews Therin gets a bad rep. And in fact, I think that they do a, somewhat good job in the cold open of episode 8 in the show, and in a number of other times where we in the books see interactions with or memories of or all of that different stuff with Lews Therin, that Lews Therin has a lot of or Rand has a lot of parallels to Lews Therin. He is the leader of the free world right now because he has to be. Because he has been dealt a hand that needs him to go ahead and say, well, I'm the one with the most power. We need to go ahead and have a person to follow because otherwise we're all just going to be herding cats around here. So I will be the figurehead. Let's go do what I think is best at the end of the day. But also, regularly we'll see him listen to advisors and things like that. But in the end of the day, Rand is basically the one making the decisions. And I really, really, really strongly feel like Lews Therin just got a lot of that. At the end of the day, he was the leader of the free world. He was the dragon. He was the one who people looked to for power and protection and safety and doing something about bad things and all of this different stuff. And so he formulated a plan, brought it to, some people. They were like, no, we're not going to help you with that. And he was like, well, I got to do something, and went and did something. And it was catastrophic, but it's also so much of how was he supposed to know that?
I mean,
I will-
we've talked about this. Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just going to say I will jump on this as well, because I think something that Robert Jordan does very beautifully here is weaves. I can see him chuckling behind his manuscript. I can see him talking about these people in
Robert
the
Jordan
third age.
was from the Carolinas. He didn't chuckle.
I can see him guffawing behind his manuscript. And I can see him saying, it's so easy for people today to look back 50 years ago and say, oh, I absolutely would not have done that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And of course, because now infinitely more than they knew 50 years ago. Guess what, guys? These didn't exist 50 years ago. Not even
Hindsight's-
close.
Hindsight's 2020.
Hindsight. And so I feel like Robert Jordan did a really
I don't know about
great
y'all, but I
thing.
can't really see that much of my ass when I look behind me. So maybe 10%.
No, it's not there. No, I think he did a really great,
Because you're sitting
thing.
on it, Jeb, you idiot.
Because we talk a lot about how, yes, it's 100% a made up story, but one of the beautiful and brilliant things about it is that he talks about real human experiences. And it's easy for Rand al'Thor to wake up every morning and say, the dragon was a jerk who killed his family and he sucks. And then someone comes up and says, oh, by the way, you're the dragon. And he goes, no,
But I
his
love
int-
my dad.
right? Exactly. No, but exactly that. Can you imagine having that thought though? Is you can imagine
Oh.
actually going, I don't want to kill my family. That's not
Well-
okay to even suggest. I'm not okay with that.
Well, and then books and books later, you get him almost can do it.
Well, even before then, yeah, you get
Exactly.
him using what quite possibly, and I believe, is the same thing that Luce Theron used, maybe without the aid of
Oh,
Caliban,
the-
but still used to
Right.
kill his family. Because when
The
they're in the
lightning
Stone
on
of
the
Tyr, he
Trollocs,
just goes,
yeah.
blah! And let's just like lightning strike every Trolloc on every floor at one time.
Right.
Oh, wait, that's not enough. The bolts start hitting other people now, too.
They don't hit people there. He gets that later with the Shan Chan. But in
Oh,
the
yeah, fair
Throne of
enough.
Tyr, he actually is very, very scalpely with that lightning.
oh, yeah,
People
fair
are
enough.
terrified of it. Don't get me wrong, as well they should be. But it only hits Trollocs, and it's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Well, emotional damage,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, sure.
And-
And there is not there is a lot to be said about emotional damage.
And I will
Emotional damage.
and I'll wrap my thought up real quick for you, Andrew, but just to say that I really feel like there's a really great means of exploration here that we, the reader, who are presumably much more well informed than any POV or perspective inside the story, have a really good chance to read the story. And every time someone says, oh, Luce Theron was an arrogant bastard, we get to check our own humanity, as it were, and giggle a little bit and go, yep, that's what happens when you are ignorant of the situation. That's what happens when you don't know. And that's not saying anything bad, because how can you know what you don't know? You can't. So that's just how it is. It's just
Yeah.
fun. It's a fun story point. If nothing else, it is a fun story point.
And
So getting into the actual, well, not the actual people. It's not to say we haven't been talking about like what actually matters for this. If I'm going to make a statement as potentially bold as Luce Theron gets a really bad rap, and he definitely wasn't the worst, then the natural question is, okay, well then who do you think was the worst? And when in the scope of in the breaking of the world, technically you could argue that Luce Theron doesn't even qualify. Well, I mean, he did kill his family and everybody in the castle, but in comparison of the 3,000 years of the breaking of the world, was it 3,000 years?
no,
Ish.
How long was it? I thought it was.
I don't think
3,000
it was
years.
that long.
Give or take a few hundred.
Yeah, however long it was. Now it's bugging me because I know I got to fix that.
I'm looking it up. So continue your thought, and I'll fill you in a second.
Okay. So within that scope, do we remember a male Chandler very near the start of the breaking of the world has one of the most infamously tragic stories related to his name, a fellow by the name of Jarek Mondoran.
It definitely rings a bell, but you're gonna want to fill us in on
Oh, yeah.
on that.
I was gonna do it anyway because I love this guy's story. For it, go ahead.
The duration of the breaking is a matter of great debate amongst historians. However, it is generally held that the breaking lasted no less than 239 years and no more than 344. So it's actually about
I added a
300
zero.
years. Well, so it's interesting because I think one of the reasons that we say that is the story that we are talking about is supposed to take place about 3,000 years after
Yeah.
the Age of Legends. And so the breaking of the world, which ended the Age of Legends and lasted for about 300 years, and then the first age and the second age or no, not the first age. Sorry, the first era and the
We're
second.
in the
era.
first age.
Sorry, no. We're in the third age.
No, you're
Sorry,
talking
you're
about
saying that
we live
yes.
as we as
Sorry,
individuals.
Yeah, sorry, but in the first era and the second era, because of course when we get to the story, it's the new era, and so the first era is the breaking, is all of the fallout from the breaking. Then they go into the era of Arthur Hawkwing. Then they go into the new era now, which started about 1,000 years ago with Arthur Hawkwing's death.
Yeah, because the White Tower's been around for 3,000 years, and it came about after the breaking.
Yes.
So we're about 3,000 years after breaking, give or take.
Yes. And
All
the tower has not actually been around for 3,000 years. It's just a round that they do. But yes, exactly. They found each other during the breaking / right after the breaking. So it's like 2,700 years old, which is close enough to say 3,000 at that point. So go ahead, Ison.
Yeah. Anyway, Jarek Mondoran.
Yes.
It's not confirmed, but it seems very likely that he was part of the 100 companions that went with Lews Therin. Given his known strength and his extensive and severe madness in the very early days of the breaking. This
He's
is
one of the
individual.
ones who was directly tainted by the Dark One, because it says that he actually got saidin and 68 of the 100 companions, like literally in the same stroke. So they went insane immediately.
He was like Bruce Banner jumping in front of the gamma radiation apparatus to protect everybody else. Only instead of turning into the Hulk, he turned into the Hulk who instantly wanted to murder everything and everyone.
Amadeus, great.
Amadeus.
Anyway,
Maestro, not Amadeus. Those are two different characters. Sorry, continue, Andrew. What are his known things are important?
He is single-handedly responsible for the destruction of the city of Zora. Tzora. Which, to put that in perspective, Zora was the second greatest city of the Age of Legends. Paradisen obviously being the first. Jarek Mondoran is the one with the story that Rand sees, I believe, in his visions, or we hear about, of the Daishain Aiel that saying to a mad channeler to try to calm him down, but also give time for people in the city to evacuate. Roughly 10,000 Daishain Aiel saying to Jarek Mondoran, and he for an hour, or he killed most of them outright at the start. And that's where you get the story that he listened to the last one sing for almost an hour before finally killing them and then destroying the city. That is this guy.
Such a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah. And once all 10,000 Daishain Aiel, who possibly months prior to this, if not even a shorter amount of time, willfully and gleefully served the Aes Sedai, of which Jarek was one. He kills these 10,000.
One of the highest of them.
Yeah. And he, after this one's dead, we don't know exactly what weave he used. It could be thought maybe Balefire, because Balefire is super fucking hot, but it doesn't seem to read like it really was, because he didn't just destroy the city, he melted the city. It was a wave of brilliant heat that turned the entire city into a solid lake of glass, fusing flesh with buildings with stone. So you give an extra hour for evacuation amongst the second greatest city in the Age of Legends. Generally, that's also going to tie very strongly to population. So the second most populous city in the Age of Legends, and we're talking at least a couple 100,000 people gone.
Yep.
I will say two things with regards to this. First, if there is one thing that the TV show 128% absolutely fucking nailed, without any debate, in my opinion, is the Tinkers, the Tuatha'an, the traveling people, those who follow the way of the leaf. Brilliant, beautiful, and perfect, and I love them. And when I think of this scene that we just spoke about, how they linked arms and sang to try and get him to come back to the light, and then they link arms in the TV show against the Children of the Light, and I'm getting like goose pimples all over right now. And then with respect to Zora, I wonder if we're going to get to see a visual of that in the show. We've already seen 2 ancient cityscape skylines. Why not a third?
I'm gonna be honest. I would love to see it, but I'm very doubtful.
Not hopeful. Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Because this is one of the things where, like, part of what makes people look backwards and see individuals as horrible monsters is the story that is told about them. And you know, it's one of those, you know, Green Goblin says it to Spider-Man. What do people love more than heroes? Watching heroes try and fail, watching heroes fall. And that's Lews Therin. He is the hero. He is the creme a la creme. He is the guy, the person, the individual, the almost deity, as far as he's revered, that will lead the world to safety, prosperity, and has done so along with his, you know, companions and the other Aes Sedai for decades now. How could he fail? And not only does he fail, but he comes back and
spectacularly.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a spectacular fail, but even that I don't put entirely on him. But
well, I didn't say
that's a
it
different
is
conversation.
entirely on him, but again, it's the stories that are told about you.
Oh yeah.
It's he gets credit by so many people for not only did you fail, but you failed so hard.
Yeah. And he comes back and commits an atrocity. So you get the story of, you know, the pinnacle of humanity that falls, and the story becomes that he takes the rest of the world with him into his descent to madness and ruins the world for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
And while that is in part true, it's not entirely untrue. It's a misrepresentation, in my opinion, of the actual events. His true physical actions that were directly an atrocity, not even, and again, we're not entertaining like that insanity is an excuse, because it doesn't make the acts any less heinous or atrocious.
Yes.
His act of atrocity and murdering everybody in his castle or his palace or whatever abundantly and unequivocally pales in comparison to Jarek Mondrian destroying the second biggest city in the world.
Yep.
But it's not as good of a story. Like, oh yeah, this guy most people didn't know, you know, destroyed an entire city on his own, versus our savior and our guardian failed and took the world with him. Like, it's not nearly as sensational. Like, Jarek's story would get about a 5-minute run on your nightly news, and they'd still be talking about Lews Therin for the next like 3 months.
Yeah, you know, that's
well, especially when you think about it as, okay, I'm not making any judgment call about this, and I'm not actually getting into politics about how to stop it or anything along those lines. Let me be very, 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 very clear about that. I'm not.
This is
We
a
all have our
Dias Damar
opinion.
statement.
We all
Nothing
have
more.
our opinions on what would be good and what would be bad and what would be helpful and what would be not. I am not trying to make anything along those lines. However, we currently live in a year and in a decade where there are entire days where school shootings or mass shootings don't even really get very much news time because they are very commonplace, or at least commonplace enough that the news reports it and then moves on to their next story. Do you know how long Columbine actually was on the news? A month and a day.
Yeah.
Like, they talked about it every day for a month and a day. And now it's just, we have a Columbine level mass shooting in the country often enough that it just doesn't get news time. And again, I am not saying that that's good or bad. I'm not trying to politicize this or anything like that. But again, it's the situation of people of the time looking at Lews Therin and the 100 Companions and what has gone down in the Sharome, and having this, oh my God, that's a terrible thing that happened. How could he have done this? We're going to talk about it for months and months. And then, of course, for the next 300 years, some former Aes Sedai or male channeler just blows up a city. I mean, like, not actually a city, but just like kills a number of people and goes insane and kills themselves or burns themselves out or whatever. Like, I don't know, every few months or every year or whatever. And so it becomes such commonplace that people just become so jaded that, like, those stories seem to really just lose their meaning. Which is one of the reasons that we actually have to go back in time to a memory that someone has of this guy destroying this city, because nobody even remembers it happened in Rand's age. Nobody scares children with this name. Nobody says, oh, don't be a bad kid, or, you know, the Ashaman will come in, or not the Ashaman, because they wouldn't have been, but the male Aes Sedai are going to come kill you. In fact, at this point, the male Aes Sedai and the female Aes Sedai are almost like thrown into the same bin as far as breaking the world, because people are so confused about what happened because everything's gotten so fucky.
That is literally the premise of the White Cloaks. And I'm sitting here going, did they have it right all along? Like, don't get me wrong, they're zealots. And anytime you have that sort of authoritarian zealotry, I don't care what your cause
whether
is.
You're right. Yeah.
I don't care what your cause is. If you have a position that is absolute authoritarian zealotry, you are wrong. Now, your cause may be just, your cause may be righteous. You, as the authoritarian shithead who is enforcing this on everybody around you without any kind of room for learning or growth, you are wrong. Okay? Now, you have, whilst in my first apartment, I learned very quickly the value of being the first guy to do a thing. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story about young Josh here that is probably not one of his finest moments. My apartment complex had a pool. This pool had not been cleaned out in a very long time. It was, you need a tetanus shot just looking at the damn thing, okay? We're all having a party one night. We're all getting crazy and being wild and crazy guys. And one guy
Were you
says,
looking for American foxes?
And one guy says, how much will you guys pay me to jump in the pool? And as we go around, we're all like 15, 20, 30, 40, 50. That dude made $85 that night because we even had neighbors getting in on this. Okay. Now, I was like, I'll do it too, guys. How much will you pay me to do it? I made $1. Now, I did it because I know the value of $1.
$20 is $20.
$20 is $20. But, and the point of this story is that the first initial shock is what stays with people. That first initial impression of whatever is what sticks with people. Now you
Mhm.
had Luz Theron, I imagine, I'm guessing here, but I imagine that Luz Theron made a very public display of his decision to seal the bore, or
I agree with that.
whatever the case may
To
be,
attack the Dark One.
to
Yeah.
attack the Dark One. I imagine a world, even in Paradisen, where it was necessary to garner public support and politic a little bit,
Mhm.
and get your likes on your golden age social media platforms and get public consensus or public support prior to doing such a big thing. Now, where we can probably make the case
Not
that
if you had emergency power.
these are given emergency powers to the emperor, where we can say
Chancellor.
that he was arrogant.
He's the chancellor at that
The
point.
chancellor, whatever.
How dare you?
He is
No.
both.
Where we can say that he was
So that's how
arrogant
democracy dies. By thunderous applause.
With thunderous clapping of ass cheeks.
clapping of cheeks. Black Tower gonna clap them cheeks. But we can make the case that he was arrogant in the fact that he
Mhm.
had to recruit. There's no way that he just was like, hey, Tamerlane, I'm gonna go do this thing. You should come with me. And she was like, no. And he was like, cool, I'm gonna go do it. And then on his way, everybody was like, we're going to join you. This is not anything like that. He absolutely
I
had,
actually
and this is where
disagree.
I'm saying any
I
arrogance,
disagree as well.
any claims of arrogance have to be entirely speculative, because what we know is that when he went off
Reports
to do
of my
this,
death have been greatly exaggerated.
and when he went off to do this, he had people with him, so he had to garner support. He did not just decide to wake up one morning and do this.
That part
And-
of your statement I agree with.
Right. And the point being here,
Hey, valued listeners, if you ever want to see Josh and I actually argue at Jordan Connor WatCon, tell him to convince me that Luz Theron was arrogant.
I'm not. Hold on. That's
No,
not
no,
what
no.
I
That's
said.
not what he said.
That
That's
the
not
action
what he
was arrogant.
said.
Whatever.
No.
That
What
this
I
action
said
was
No,
was,
arrogant.
no.
what I said was, any accusation of arrogance is entirely speculative, because we don't have the facts of the scenario. The facts we do know paint Luz Theron as desperate. And when he sealed the bore, he exposed Saidin to the Dark One's touch, tainting the male half of the power. And it turned out to be a very good thing for the women to stand back and say, no, we're not going to participate in this. But the only reason it turned out to be a good thing is because we have the benefit of hindsight. And that's what allowed channeling to continue on. I yield back.
Thin
my
ice,
time.
Sora Von Mail. Thin ice.
So I'm
Oh,
going to jump
Daniel.
in here and actually really talk about a thing that we've danced around a couple of times, because it's another question that we've talked about before, and another thing that really adds to this whole debate. So I'm going to start this off with a story. The other day, my partner and I actually went to see a production of Into the Woods. And Into the Woods is a musical by Stephen Sondheim, which puts together a number of classic fairy tale characters and tells their stories simultaneously through a particular medium, which happens to be the woods that they all live around, where they all go in search of their dream, their wish, whatever it is that they're looking for. And there's a character in the show that is the witch, which actually is a pretty major character in the show, and actually gets the ball rolling on a number of different things in the story for a couple of different characters. Now, in the second act, the conflict of the second act is that there is a giant sort of terrorizing the land, and they want to find Jack because they are upset that he killed their husband. We all know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. Great. Now, there's a whole scene and a whole song in the show of where they're all placing blame on other people for why it's not their fault that this conflict is happening and why it's more someone else's fault. And it's a really fun song on a lot of ways, because each time somebody goes ahead and says, well, it's not my fault, it's this person's fault, that person pushes it further back down the line until you get to like the most fundamental fault giving, but they don't even make it there in the song before the witch comes out and says, it doesn't matter whose fault it is, we just have to deal with this situation. And I think that that's part of this discussion that we're having here, which is the idea of one of the things you can do is you can just say, it's no one's fault, we have to fix it. Great. I'm absolutely down with that. I actually think that that's a great thing to do overall when you're problem solving. But it also makes debates like this and talks like this very difficult, because who is the most at fault here? Do we blame each individual Ashaman? Or again, I keep using Ashaman. They weren't Ashaman at that point. Male channelers, if
We know what you mean.
Right? Do we blame each individual male Aes Sedai for the acts of atrocity that they committed when they were mad? Oh, okay, well, but who made them mad in the first place? Do you blame the Dark One wholly for that because he gave the backswing on Saidin? Do you blame, each individual male Aes Sedai who went with Lews Therin to go do this thing that ended up getting the Dark One to be accessible or to have access to Saidin to give that backlash? Do you blame the leader of that expedition, Lews Therin? Okay, well, now keep going back. Do you actually blame the Tamerlane for not coming along? Because, of course, in the end, we know that the way that Rand seals the Dark One's prison again is actually using Saidin, Saidar, and the True Power.
Yes.
So clearly,
Which
Lews Therin had no chance of actually going ahead and defeating the Dark One or even sealing him away at that time with his method or with Rand's method, because he was missing an entire component of that. So do you blame the female Aes Sedai who didn't go with him to go ahead and do this? Do you blame the Tamerlane who was the leader who said, no, the female Aes Sedai are not going to go with you? And do you go even further back? And do you blame Lanfear, or as she was known at the time, the scientist, for going ahead and boring into the boar in the first place and causing all of this to happen and cause Lews Therin to even need to come up with a plan of how to go ahead and seal the Dark One away? And so again, this is the interesting sort of debate about who is more at fault, who did the most damage, who is most responsible for the breaking of the world, and who did the worst things. Because again, I think in the end, you cannot argue really that there are a few male Aes Sedai who did horrible, unspeakable things during the breaking of the world. Some of them destroyed mountains and raised lakes and all of that different stuff and killed a lot of people. But where do you keep going back? Andrew, you have a thought.
I am about to explode.
Do it.
So many thoughts. God, this might spawn off like 4 episode ideas.
Do it.
On the he couldn't have sealed him away anyway. I think that there's a discussion to be had there, because I agree he couldn't have perfectly sealed him away.
Sure.
But I believe it would have been a more perfect seal. Now I give it a 50-50 shot, because we see Saidar used as the filter to pull the taint off of Saidin. So it's one of those like, is there a 50-50 shot that one could have shielded the other from being tainted and they would have just failed, or it would have been a better seal, but still imperfect seal? And maybe instead of the third age, it would have been like the fifth age. Who knows? I mean, it's a whole big what if. We don't know. And the people that would be able to answer that would probably tell us to not worry about that WAFO or whatever. So there's that thought. The other one is
that WAFO.
yeah. And I guess the prevailing one, well, kind of two for me, is for me, like the topic of this episode of who did the most damage is purely a look back to see, like, without trying to necessarily tie a string of cause and effect to things, or I mean, you can as part of the damage, but you're more so quantifying either an individual person or an individual event as like what was the most damaging event of the breaking, or who dealt the most damage. For me, or at least that's how I'm going about it. Not to say that anybody else is or isn't. Rather than saying like who's the most at fault for the breaking, because again, you do go down that scope. And going into that point, I wholeheartedly agree with you, Daniel, about when you're in the middle of trying to solve the problem. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. You put that aside, you put a pin in that, and you fix and deal with the problem. But one of the things, businesses do it all the time, especially after like cyber attacks and after they lose data or something like that. The military does it after fucking every training exercise. I'm surprised we don't after action review every fucking CBT and every PowerPoint. But the point of the after action review, which is what I see kind of us going back and like who's at fault or whatever, isn't necessarily to identify who is culpable for the failing or the greatest failing. It's to identify the failings that happened, because a lot of these failings, just like there was no way for Lews Therin to know that he was going to doom male channelers to insanity for the next almost 3,000 years. Just like there was no way for his counterpart to know that by keeping the female Aes Sedai out of it, that she would aid in dooming male channelers and also potentially save all the female channelers. There was no way for Mirren to know that trying to just access a more plentiful unisex version of power would literally throw the entire world into chaos for hundreds, if not thousands of years, which is all a fair point. But that's why you have so many facets of our lives that do after action reviews. Hey, what could we have done differently that might have helped us avoid the biggest risk? It's why we do risk assessments on things. What can we do to minimize that risk? And part of that requires hindsight and looking back at, okay, what led up to this? And we do it all the time in history. You start learning history from a small thing here that led to all this here. You don't start learning about what started World War I with, the assassination of King Ferdinand. You start learning about what led to World War I whenever we started allying with everybody, or everybody started allying with everybody, and why they became allies and how the borders changed. At least, once you reach a certain age, because it's not to necessarily say that, X, Y, or Z is the cause, but here's part of this massive domino chain that led to the majority of the world, or at least half the world being embroiled in conflict.
God, it's Daniel. It's Daniel suffering from the taint tonight. I will say this.
Blame for World War I?
Oh, there we go. I heard.
Oh, you're back. Welcome back. That thing you just said, say it again. Wait,
Domino's was responsible for World War I?
Yes. Everybody wanted that garlic crust.
Yeah. Stop ordering Domino's pizza, you fascist bastards.
Wait, what?
No, I love the comment that you made, Andrew, that there was absolutely no way that they could have known when Lews Therin and Mirren were exploring new ways of harnessing power. There's no way they could have known that they were literally unleashing the devil upon the world. There was no way that Lews Therin could have. We don't have any confirmation that Lews Therin could access the true source, right?
No, not
I
at
mean,
all. Now,
Well, 'cause
granted,
the
again,
true source
Not
was
at all as
filtered
in no
through-
confirmation, or not at all as in no, he absolutely could not.
I
no
would
is in
s-
no confirmation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, though I would posit that he absolutely could not because that was filtered through the Dark One.
But
Mm,
that's what the Forsaken say. But then why would Rand have access to it?
Because he pulled it from his bond with Moradin and took over that
Correct.
connection.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And that's why like the true source isn't the answer for the pipe. Because once the Dark
No.
One's sealed away, the true
No.
source is sealed away.
No, he even talks about trying to access the true source and is unable to access any forms of channeling.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
and
for
this
him,
is-
they're all gone, but
yes, and of course, unfortunately, this is actually what you just brought up. Is I want to throw out here. Let us, as a podcast, because I am going to speak for all three of us right now for a second. There are a lot of male channelers in the Age of Legends into the breaking of the world. We have so few stories about individual male Aes Sedai and different things through this, because all that we know is filtered through people who are currently alive and or flashbacks or things like that, through glass columns or through trying to get in touch with their former selves, like their past lives and things like that. And so the number of accounts that we have are so small that if Robert Jordan or even Brandon Sanderson have in their mind a story of a real bad male channeler during the breaking, that's the guy who did the most damage. That one. The one we don't know about that's in Robert Jordan's head. That one's the worst, without a doubt. We're just working with the information that we have. And a lot of what we talk about here on these philosophical things is suspect.
It's a lot of what
we
if.
don't have enough of enough information. Exactly. We are only working with such a small amount of information that it's hard to say with certainty any of this stuff. Because again, I also think philosophically that Lews Therin did not have access to the true source. But there is nothing in the books that say he definitively did or didn't. So you really just come down on the side of what you think is true based on the information that you were given, because we are not given information that specifically says Lews Therin didn't or Lews Therin did, or that the Tamerlane said this or the Tamerlane said that. This is all speculation to a certain extent. Not all of it,
No,
but
pretty
there's a
much all of
lot
it.
of
Pretty much all of it.
speculation going in. Sure, as I said, not all of it, but a really high amount of it is speculation. And so again, sort of the idea of also the other problem is that this book series is written brilliantly, and I fucking love it. And I know that these other two do as well, partially because each POV is suspect.
and also before
Every
somebody else
single
comes in and corrects us, by true source, we definitely mean true power.
Yes.
Sorry, yes, true power.
That's
Thank you.
Dude,
That's
it
the
completely
thing.
escaped me until
Yeah.
like I literally am
Yeah,
now
yeah.
trying to see if like that was ever a question asked of Robert Jordan or Brandon or Harriet.
However, if there's
It
anything
is.
else with
It
this
is actually a
episode that
question.
we're getting wrong, or if there's a piece of information that we have yet to take into consideration, leave it in a comment and maybe we'll do another episode about it, because if there's one thing we love, it's chewing on hypotheticals in the Wheel of Time, because there's just so much material to work with.
Yeah.
It all
But
in
anyway.
all, yeah. All in all,
But
I
yeah.
will say that with the only information, and this is going to be kind of a two-sided coin here, or a double-edged sword. The only information that we have for sure that we know about the Age of Legends with regards to the perspective of someone living in the Third Age is any information that's given to us from Rand after post a revelation, right? When he goes from Darth Rand to Bodhisattva Rand, and he says, you know, he starts talking about the Age of Legends. He starts talking about things from a first person point of view when he's speaking with Cad Swain about, yeah, I see you're wearing a paralysis net. And she's like, a what? And he's like, a paralysis net, my dear. I wore one. I'm the oldest living Aes Sedai. But if you don't want to call me that, that's fine. I understand. And it's the only first person POV we get in the story itself, aside from the prologue, is, oh, actually, I was going to say a thing that's probably not true, is Rand post Revelation. But even that is subject to question because of the madness, because of the taint unsightly. But I realize now I'm getting that wrong, because you do also have the Green Man, Someshta, who has a first person POV from the Age of Legends.
The other one that I was going to throw out was Rand's trip through the crystal columns, because it really does seem like
that's a
the
good point as well.
audience is actually getting a pretty objective look at what was going on in there. But again, it's also very suspect, because it's Rand's POV, what he's seeing through other people's eyes. And we all know that two people can witness the same event and get different things out of it. And so again, it feels like that is a situation that's giving us mostly objective information, but even then you can't be sure. And that is back to what I was saying about this story is brilliant with the what can you believe shit.
Turns out your information is only mostly subjective. Now, mostly subjective is different from all subjective.
Indeed.
Now there is definitely potentially very, very, very much conjecture and kind of assuming some things. Somebody that could potentially definitely be worse, because that's how English works. Worse than Jarek. It is dependent on several factors, none of which we have the answer to. In fact, this person's entry, even on a fandom site, is 2 sentences. And that is an individual who is also a male Aes Sedai, who presumably went mad towards the very beginning of the breaking. An individual, a fine man, if you would like to be evil, or insane at least, named Haindar, Haindar. Say it is potential, because we know he was driven mad by the taint on Saidin, and was last ever seen, from what we can tell, heading towards Paradisen. He was last seen heading towards Paradisen, which probably means that Paradisen was still a city at the time. And now it is not. I'm not saying Haindar did the thing, but it also if we take what the show shows us, there are potential indications that Paradisen wasn't turned into a glass lake.
It's not a glass bowl, no.
Yeah.
It is that Paradisen in the show, though. In the finale, where Rand confronts Ishmael. Come on, guys, get it right.
They said Ishmael.
Yeah, but look at the character listing in the X-ray, the Amazon X-ray.
Oh, okay. Who cares? Amazon gets it wrong sometimes
Yeah.
with their X-rays.
But is that paradisant? They call it the eye of the world in the show, which is, I'm sorry, one of the things I hate about the finale. Ugh. It's just a spot. There's no significance whatsoever to this spot that we can see now. I reserve the right to bring this opinion back for season 2 if they're going to do something with season 2.
Doesn't
They're trying to say it was a seal. They're trying to say it was one of the seals. And I know they're going to try and use that as that's how the Forsaken were released, is because Rand destroyed the seal at the Eye of the World. And I'm like, that
yeah.
stop.
Yeah. I mean, from the show, Rand, so they're not really doing the whole, because in the books, Lews Therin fights Ishmael in the Hall of Servants when Ishmael declares himself for the Shadow and defeats him the first time, and Ishmael leaves. It seems like the show is just gonna have that be where Ishmael was defeated and sealed. However, Rand in the show does talk about how he remembers fighting the man there, and it was called the Hall of Servants. The
Right.
Hall of Servants is located in Paradisant, or was located in Paradisant. So for the show's answer, what it's showing there is definitely Paradisant. But now that I'm thinking about it, we don't see those structures overgrown by the blight whenever they show the columns and the couple hills that were what we see in the cold open for episode 8. So but Paradisum was the seat of government. Now, if they were closer to the Column Dom, then it would be the city of Vasane. V''SAINE, because that's where the Column Dom, which was the university, was located. Which above floated the Sharom, which is where Meryn did her I'm gonna poke the Dark One's butthole.
Secret jutsu, 1,000 years of death.
Yeah.
Okay. When it
So
comes
there's
to
kind of answer, but also like a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
when it comes to when we start wrapping this up to final thoughts, I'm looking at this, and we start this off with the original question of who did the most damage. And I'm willing to say that you've got two different answers. One is the guy who pulled the trigger did the most damage. And in that case, whether or not he was arrogant, whether or not he was misinformed, whether or not he had all the best intentions, which, as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Ultimately, the guy that pulled the trigger is the guy who caused the most damage. But there is also a school of thought, and I will quote one of my favorite movies of all time, The Boondock Saints, and I will say that we must all fear evil men, but there is something else that we must fear even more, and that is the indifference of good men. Now, when I'm saying men, I'm not talking about men, I'm talking about humankind.
Can you
The
do that again?
indifference.
But can you do it in the voice it's supposed to be done in?
Now,
You're already wearing your Peaky Blinders hat. You should be able to do it.
fear evil men, but there is another evil that we must fear even more, and that is the indifference of good men.
Thanks,
And in
Dan.
that case, I still struggle to find fault with the Tamerlane, because she did, in her own way, tried her best to stop him from what was about to happen. Was she correct in that?
See,
Ultim-
and that's
Ultimately,
that's
it
where
worked
the
out.
debate is.
So 3,000 years later, is she correct? I don't know.
See,
But
but again, this
Also,
is one
it's
of
a
the
wheel,
things.
so it's going to come back around. Is she correct? I don't
Look.
know. She's doing what the wheel wants her to do, so we don't have whatever.
This is one of the things that I love and hate about this debate. Because if the person that you're killing needs 2 gunshots to kill them, and you can only shoot them once with each gun in your hand, and someone comes along and says, no, that's wrong, and takes one of your guns, even if they saved themselves, they could have just had you kill the bad thing with the 2 guns. You know what I'm saying? Like, so again, I appreciate the argument of no one could know. No one could know. No
You
one
got to
could.
do the best you can do.
But it's definitely one of those things that you're standing there going, I don't have all of the tools in my toolbox, but I need to do something. And someone else is going, I have half your tools, but I'm not gonna help you because no one knows if you're right. When you get to where you're going and don't have all the tools in your toolbox, if you were right, but don't have all the tools, you're just as screwed as if you were wrong. But now it's hard to tell whether you were wrong or just didn't have all your
Or
tools.
just lucky.
I
or just
love the
fucking
phrasing
lucky.
of that. I love the phrasing of that. Even if you only have half the tools that you need, you're still just as screwed as if you did nothing.
Yeah.
Because one thing that Luz Theron knew to be true, what we are currently doing is not working. We are losing. We must do something different. We need to do something. And what do we always know about the books as well? That the greatest accomplishments, the greatest feats, the greatest things that ever happened with saidin and saidar working together in harmony. One could say that when saidar, or the representation of saidar, backed off and said, nope, we're good, they were willing to let the world burn because of fear of the unknown. That's totally not a theme in the White Tower.
Well, we also know 2 things, and Norm just brought it up.
There it
Doing
is.
the same thing over and over again while expecting different results is one of the definitions of insanity. The other thing that we know from our own world and is taught very widely is that complacency breeds contempt. And what we have is a society that has lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years with no need for military action. None. It is a peaceful society, at best moderate policing, because that's what makes it the Age of Legends, the Age of Paradise. This is the golden age where people are living in prosperity. War is an all but foreign concept.
It's a philosophical concept.
Yeah. Let me rephrase. It is presumed that is what the Age of Legends is like. Can't guarantee it, but essentially, definitely large scale war is a foregone thought because this is the age of reason. We can talk it out. We can science it out. We can communicate like fine, classy adults and fix the problems without fighting. And so you have a society that is predisposed towards going for either the surefire way, the science way, and as much as they can, the non-violent way, no direct conflict way, versus realizing times are now fundamentally different because the status quo has tremendously and fundamentally changed. And it's not in our favor.
Okay. So FYI, I do want to throw out there, this is just a mild clarification and not like, this is again, one of those things where we don't, but there is a paragraph here that I think is actually kind of important that is a little Watchmen-y. And it's from the wiki, on the Age of Legends, which is, however, all was not as it seemed. According to Rand al'Thor / Luz Theron, despite the society's apparently utopian state, there were still social problems festering beneath the civilization's veneer that the world's government did not want to acknowledge. In hindsight, he believed that, had the bore not been drilled, these social problems might have caused a war to eventually break out regardless. So just because it didn't get to war in the Age of Legends does not mean that that was off the table. It just meant that there were no major wars being actively fought, not that no one would have started.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's why I chose the word war.
Mhm.
War
You did.
was almost a foregone thought. Conflict
Mhm.
is, as long as two individuals exist, there will always be conflict.
Yes.
So final thoughts. When we say
we
when
have
we
those.
yeah, we do. Sometimes.
We force
Sometimes we
ourselves
say
to.
that and then we keep talking until we go, oh shit, this is way too long. Or
We need
oh shit, we
actual
did
final
a
thoughts. Yeah,
did a 5-part episode on Elaine.
we don't talk about that.
No,
Or
my final
Bruno.
thoughts are is that it is so easy to point blame. It is
Mhm.
so easy to omit details in a situation and say it's this person's fault. It is so easy to do that. But if we know the parable of the donkeys and the horses, the donkeys descended into a valley one day and were walking and having a great time. And all of a sudden, a pack of wolves circled and surrounded them. And the donkeys immediately started kicking at each other. They formed a circle and they started kicking at each other, blaming each other for getting themselves into the situation. And the wolves took them down. The wolves easily took them down with no problems. The horses, a herd of horses came into the same valley, and a pack of wolves came down and said, we're going to make easy lunch of this. And the horses put their heads together, worked as a team, and kicked outwards to defeat the oncoming enemy. And those horses survived and were able to traverse the rest of that valley without any issues. When you seek to place blame on another person, you are only harming your cause. The best solution in any kind of situation, if you want to progress, if you want to move forward, if you want to learn, if you want to be better tomorrow, is to put your heads together, work together, and depend on each other. And things are fantastic. And that is the lesson that Rand learned that Luz Theron did not.
Andrew?
I agree. Yeah, that's my final thought. I agree. No, the absolutely fair answer is to be able to assign culpability, which was not what I envisioned as the purpose here, which is not
Correct.
to say that that's what we made the purpose.
Hey.
It's what
to
I
assign
think the purpose
culpability
was, if we're
re-
being completely honest.
Yeah.
So I apologize if I got it wrong. And I don't think we had a bad discussion, but it wasn't necessarily the discussion you were envisioning. And that is
Oh no,
fair.
I was going like pure logic, like who just did the most damage or what was the most damaging event,
Mhm.
rather than who's at fault for
That'll
what.
be that'll be another episode. Who
Yeah, we
did,
can always do
who
a
did
part
the
two.
most actual damage?
But to assign culpability for something requires that the person you're trying to hold culpable either had awareness and knowledge of their actions and or what would happen, or could reasonably be expected to have that. And of the many things that we agree on, because we all agree on everything,
Everything, all the time.
is that all of these, or the vast majority of these actions that lead to the
Pineapple
breaking.
belongs on pizza.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
I would absolutely agree. I
Yeah.
love pineapple.
It's delicious.
On pizza.
Did
I
I
want
mention
pizza.
that we all agree on everything?
Um,
Continue.
One of the many things that we've agreed on is that these actions that turned out to have unintentional but detrimental effects on the world nobody that made those decisions could have reasonably been expected to know what would happen. Marin could not have reasonably been expected to know that she would unleash literal evil on the world, to the fact where the second it was there, she fucking shit her pants and said, I'll work with you. Don't kill me. Because the other guy died. He fucking died right there. Lews Therin couldn't have known that he would have, made Sidene vulnerable to the taint. In the book, she's not the Tamerlane. I forgot the name for Lews Therin's counterpart because he was the Tamerlane in the books. But in the show, she's the
that's
Tamerlane.
right.
That's correct.
So
Yeah,
going
they-
from a show perspective, the Tamerlane couldn't have known that by saying no, that she was potentially damning male Chandlers to a life of madness and saving female Chandlers. There's no way that they could have known the ramifications of their decisions. So to truly blame any of them for being responsible for the breaking as individuals is a misnomer for assigning blame. They can't be culpable for something they could not have reasonably expected to have happened. And there was no precedent for them to reasonably expect. But you can follow the chain of events to kind of be like, okay, this led to this, led to this, led to this, so that you can write records that will definitely fade to legend, and legend that fades to myth, and myth that is even lost when the age that gave it birth comes around again. So that nobody learns a lesson because there's just that much time in between. As for my original thought process with this, who did the most damage, there were no other real suggestions because we went we talked around this whole topic, which was a fantastic discussion. Mondrian, he's that fucking guy from what we know, in my humble opinion. But that's it for me as I ramble on. What you got, Daniel?
So I'm going to throw in a new candidate for this here at the end because I want no discussion. I want no one to talk about this. No, I'm just kidding. I just thought of it a second ago, which is why I'm throwing it in here. But I think that the homies who created the ways, they did the most damage. When you go ahead and have people going through your ways and they lose their entire sanity but don't die, that's horrible. I'd rather
Did you die?
I would rather be glass and no longer around than living, but also be a husk of my former self.
You'd rather be Pompeii than an asylum patient.
Done immediately. There is not even a question there.
Fair enough.
Though I will say, I think that it's interesting that I'm not actually disagreeing with Andrew here because there isn't actually any discernible precedent here for the person who is sort of effectively the leader of the female Aes Sedai to look at and say, we are not going to do this because the last time we did this, this happened. And so I don't want that to happen, so I'm not going to help. But also, that kind of means that there's not precedent for her to say, the last time we did this, it did work out, so we will help you. So she's really looking with very little information, except that all of the greatest acts that have ever been created or done have been with both halves of the power. And so I actually do throw a certain amount of culpability on the female Aes Sedai at the time for not going with, because I am an actor, and a character or a person who goes on stage or a person who goes on film and doesn't commit to their character in any way, shape, or form is hilarious. An actor who goes on and commits to their character 100% is most often awesome. A character or an actor who goes on somewhere and half-asses their commitment to whatever character they're playing is really lame. And
a character
that's
that
what
half-asses their commitment to the actor is the worst.
That is the worst.
Fuck you, character who half-asses your commitment to the actor.
But sort of what I'm sort of saying here is that as the female Aes Sedai in the Age of Legends, we've already determined bad things were happening. Things were going to shit. Doing the same thing now over and over again, hoping that you will still win, is the worst thing you can do. Maybe not the worst, but like high up there.
I will say, in her defense, she was aware of and waiting for the completion of the Choden Call.
And that's fair.
So she
That's
thought
it.
going without the Choden Call was going in with half their tools. Whereas, yeah.
Well,
I can't believe I actually just defended her because I absolutely
No.
agree, but-
No. I
Yeah.
appreciate that, though I will also say
We need a part 2.
Going in with half your tools is still better than going in with a quarter of your tools. So
We need a part 2.
we do
Hey!
need a part 2. Anyway, we're going to do a part 2. My last thoughts are listen for part 2. Enjoy yourselves tonight, and we'll come back to this at some point later and talk about this more. My
And-
idea is the way the male channelers who didn't realize that they were fucked when they made the ways. Those are the ones who did the most damage.
Those fucking
Andrew
bastards.
said his. Josh doesn't have a thought on this because he didn't do enough research.
No,
Head-
his thought is it's if we talk about it now,
How
it'd be a
dare you,
spoiler for
sir.
part 2.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that's right.
This is
You
reserved
gotta,
for
you
part
gotta
2.
come to part 2 for me.
Yeah. Speaking of coming to part 2, put down the your phone that's stuck on vibrate or your personal massager that weirdly looks like a karaoke mic from Japan.
Red Rod Terangrial.
Let us know if there
I have one of
is.
those.
I know.
There's another group that we've had on, or another show or person we've had on the show before as a guest that you think fits this episode or part 2 of this episode perfectly, or you just want to see what they would say. Let us know, and we cannot promise, but we will try to get them on because we're in season 4, right? Yeah, season 4
Has been kind of light on guests.
yeah, we've been light on guests this far. Normally we're fairly guest moderate, but we've been pretty light on it. If you want to see Norm back, let us know. If you want us to get more Shoddy back on, even though I think there's another episode we're doing in the future that we're supposed to have more Shoddy on for part 2.
Yep, it's
I
the
don't-
actual deep dive into
Supposed to have him on,
origins
yeah.
of the Wheel of Time,
Yeah.
and then we're
Yeah.
supposed to have North.
We're
Harbor
supposed to have
back
Dr.
on
Livingston
for-
on that one too.
No,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
supposed to do that
absolutely.
one on our deep dive. That's the next part after that, because Morshadi's
Double
going to tell
deep.
us all of the things that he noticed, and then Michael Livingston is supposed to come on and tell us all the shit that Morshadi got wrong.
We're
Speaking-
diving deep into the living of Stun.
Honestly, speaking of Michael Livingston, guys, he's confirmed to attend both JordanCon and WatCon. Don't fucking at me. He's been posting it on Twitter. And I'm gonna pull it up right now. I'm gonna pull it
Let's
up
do
right
it.
now
No, let's
so
just
that
do it.
I quote it directly from the man himself. Okay. Of
Okay.
course, now I'm
But
not.
while
gonna
he's
be able
pulling
to
that
find
up,
it.
whenever you have your ideas, put them in the comment section down below.
Mhm.
Put them in the Discord. Tweet it at us. Whatever you have to do to get
Make
the
a
message to us.
TikTok.
He says
If you do it
We'll duet it.
on like Twitter or whatever, make sure you tag whoever you want to come on as well,
that's true.
so that they look at it and go, "What the fuck is this?
Tell
Black Tower? Hell
us.
no!"
So Michael Livingston on Twitter as @medievalguy. Please follow him. He's amazing. He really is an absolute
He's very
Just-
medieval.
rock star. The tweet
Hold on,
is
small
as
clues.
follows, and I quote: "Seriously, y'all, you need to come to WatCon official in July. I have secrets to share." Do
Well, in that case,
not. And as we know, and as we have discussed, there are still aspects, facets, and finer points of the story in the Wheel of Time that the fans have speculated on for literal decades now that we still don't have confirmation on. And Dr. Michael Livingston is here to
He's got some tea.
help us with some of that. He's not going to give us all of it, and that's fine.
And for those of you watching that just saw me cover my mouth, I don't know the specifics. I know in general,
Yeah,
what it is.
Andrew,
But that's what
literally-
happens whenever you help plan the pun. So
thank you.
which
so
these
much
guys
for
do
being
too,
here.
whichever way I'm supposed to point
Yeah.
on Josh's screen.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for conducting yourselves in the manner of a member of the Black Tower whilst receiving this week's dose of taint. I hope you've appreciated this week's dose of taint, and I hope that you leave here just a wee bit more mad than you were when you first arrived. From all of us here at the Black Tower, I have been your Sorovan Mahale, Josh.
I'm just staring at that face now. Anyway, I have been your Bajan Mahale, Andrew. That wasn't even a joke. Like I forgot my title for a second. I almost said
Attack
Daniel's
leader.
title. I
Attack
was like,
leader.
Battle
I'm
leader.
something. Yeah.
He's the belittle leader. Wait, what?
I mean, you piss me off enough, I can do it.
That
History
was my
proves that.
point. And I have been your Ammon Khan Mahale, Daniel. And from all of us here at the Black Tower, again, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for listening. We hope that you're having a lovely morning. And in case we don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Also, it's your fault.
Like,
It is your
subscribe, share to all of your friends, but not your
All
mother,
that.
because she'd beat your ass if you shared this with her.
You'd be in trouble. You'd be grounded. That's for damn
Always
sure.
running the show.
In the tower, you can bring your pain. In the tower, you can feel the strain.
You've been having so much trouble just fitting in.